It's always a beautiful day in the city of Five Nations. The people are what make it beautiful. And we are. City of Five Nations podcast is proud to present Police Positive, Fulfilling Your Dream series. And over the past 5 episodes, we've met a number of wonderful police officers from the City of Five Nations, and today is no exception. I got to talk a little bit with Corporal Richard Ruiz before we started, and I am looking forward to great conversation. But first, let's bring on Major Rod Taylor, the brain trust behind this operation. Rod.
Hello, Daniel.
How are you today, my man?
It's awesome. It's an awesome day.
It is. It really is. And you know, what really makes it awesome for somebody to begin a career at the police department here in our City of Five Nations?
We have some vacancies right now that we'd like to fill, and I think the timing is perfect for those motivated individuals who want to be challenged and want a career other than a job. We have those positions available. You're going to get to experience working with some of the best police officers in the state. We provide all kinds of training, hours and hours of training, and those opportunities are there each year. So we would just love to see some bright, shining new faces.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not only being able to work with some of the best police officers in the state, get to work with some of the best people in the world, Rod. We've met some quality people over the last 5 days, and today already, no exception.
Yeah.
So let's get right to Officer Richard Ruiz. I'm going to let you go, Major, and introduce Richard Ruiz, Corporal Richard Ruiz, who grew up right here in Shawnee. Corporal, when you were growing up, did you have the dream to be a police officer?
No, I didn't. My sister is actually CPA. She's in realty appraisal. And so I kind of want to follow along in her footstep and do that. And the first interaction I had with the police officer was with Freeland Wood at Shawnee High School. It was positive. He was awesome. And I did a ride along, and I loved it. So that's when the dream kind of sparked for me.
And, you know, I've heard the term ride along a couple of times now. I think you're the third one that has mentioned a ride along prior to becoming a police officer. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, and is it available now for people to be able to do?
Yes, it is. It's awesome. Any citizen, any community member, anyone that's interested in just seeing what police officers do. They go to the police department, they contact our supervisor, they have to fill out some paperwork, and they get thrown into the fire with us. They get to ride along with us and see what we do on a day-to-day basis.
That sounds like a lot of fun. When you first did that, was it Freeland that you had the ride along with, and how old were you?
I don't remember how old I was.
Were you
have
in
to
high
be
school?
over 18. No.
Oh, okay.
No, you have to be over 18. So I was probably 18 or 19. And I rode along with an officer that was a family friend.
So you were in a safe place, Richard.
I was in a safe place. You're right.
Well, let's bring on Chrissy. Talking about safe places. Chrissy, join us, please, as we have Chrissy Brown. Christina is in her profession, but around here, you're Chrissy, of course. And talking about familiar faces, Chrissy, we have one. You know all of the officers about as well as anybody. Tell us a little bit about Corporal Ruiz.
Oh, my goodness. I've got some stories, but not stories to tell on here. One, you know, I do.
No, wait. Tell the stories. Tell the stories.
But he is fun to work with. You know, I've had the opportunity to see him interact with kids in the community, my own kids. He interacts great with them. I know that he's been interested in trying to work with the local law enforcement explorer group. He's done great trying to make sure that the public see the positive aspects of law enforcement, that it's not all bad. You're not going to get arrested just because you're around an officer. Also, he's actively promoted the recruiting of officers for Shawnee Police Department.
So, Corporal Ruiz, what makes it so good to be a police officer here in the city of Five Nations? Why would you encourage other people to be a police officer?
Just from what I learned in my first ride along, it's every day is different. You go to work, you don't know what your first call is going to be. Yesterday we got into a car chase. It was fun, catching people that are endangering kids driving around, and actually getting to be a mentor, a counselor, a father figure to kids. It's awesome. I love it.
Wow, that's wonderful. And you told me, I believe you went to North Rock Creek, and we had a teacher that was the same. And in fact, Freeland Wood was in my class for Stan
really?
Beasley. And you kind of mentioned Stan being one of your favorite teachers. What is it about an adult leader, like a police officer or a teacher, that's so important to kids?
When you're growing up, you look for any kind of positive role model. I like structure, and he was a great teacher. He motivated you. He got excited whenever we were learning, and it's just positive reinforcement. So I loved attending his class every day.
Well, and talking about positive reinforcement, of course, that's probably the cue to bring Major Rod Taylor back on if we're talking about positive reinforcement. It's well done, Corporal Ruiz. Rod, man, tell us a little bit about Corporal Ruiz and what you saw in him to bring him on to the force.
I think it's Corporal Ruiz, but I may be wrong.
See,
I don't know.
I told everybody I was going to mess that up. Everybody, full disclosure. Sorry, man.
Hey, it's either or. It's either or.
But I think Richard has spent most of his time in patrol, and I think you've been on about 9 years now.
9 years this year, yes, sir.
And so I had the pleasure of being on the same shift on midnights with Richard, and I'll never forget one night we were sitting there, and I don't know exactly where we were, but I remember the conversation. I said, so tell me a little bit about where you grew up, and I couldn't hear you guys talking earlier, so I may have been fooled by Richard, but his story to me, he said, well, I went to Grove, and I've been in your house. And I said, what? You've been in my house? And he said, yeah, I went to your daughter's birthday party. And I said, no kidding. I said, what a small world. And so I don't know if he went to Grove or North Rock Creek, but that's what I remember. Is that true, Richard?
It's partially true. I did go to North Rock Creek. I met your daughter, Alexis, our freshman year in high school.
Oh, okay.
And I went to her birthday party freshman year at your house. You were actually a neighbor of my grandmother.
Yes, so. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I got some of those facts wrong, I guess.
You had the majority of it right. Yeah.
The majority. That's funny. So
yeah,
you spent.
Of course. Go ahead.
You spent most of your time in patrol, and you were also an FTO, a field training officer. So I have some questions when you get a chance to think about and answer those, because a lot of the time that a new officer comes into the department is spent in that FTO program. And so when you get a chance, explain that program and what it's like, and whether they spend the whole time with one trainer or they move to several others and do any fail, and what that experience is like for you and for the rookie.
Okay. That's one of my favorite parts of being on patrol. I like teaching people. I take pride in teaching good officers morals and doing the right thing. You start off on phase 1, and it could be any of the shifts. It usually tends to be day shifts. You have 2 weeks of not being graded, and you'll follow your training officer, and he'll teach you what's going on and how to do the job. After that, you start being graded. It's 5 weeks of being graded on the first shift, the first phase. After that 7 weeks total, you move on to the next phase, which could be midnight shift or evening shift or any of the other ones. And it's another 5 weeks of being graded. As long as you keep passing, you move on to the next step. The third step is the last shift, 5 more weeks of being graded. And then the last 2 weeks you go back to your phase 1 FTO, and basically he's just observing you and grading you. It's really stressful because he's just watching you and making sure you're not doing anything wrong. And to me, that was stressful because just being graded and having someone watch you, it's just a different experience. But thankfully I passed, and I've had at least 4 rookies just by myself, and I think 3 of the 4 have passed with me. So it's pretty rewarding.
That's really
great.
interesting.
Yeah.
And so, Rod, all recruits who come on, is that part of their training? They go through FTO? And is that what Freeland was referring to yesterday when he talked about being in the patrol for so long, or on the force for so long, and then not being, I guess, going through that program?
Yeah, Freeland kind of missed out on that because he was at the school for so long. And he would have been a great trainer as well. But those who are in patrol have that opportunity. And Richard can tell you how you become an FTO and what that's like as a trainer. I was kind of curious as to how long he has been training.
Oh, I'm not even sure of the years. It's been a couple years now. Basically, you just have to prove to your supervisors that you know what you're doing the majority of the time. You're not going to mess up. Once you earn that trust, then I guess they would go to Major Taylor, the chief, and say, hey, this officer should be an FTO. And then we get put through a school of different ways to teach, because everybody learns at different teaching styles. And it's my job as a trainer to adapt my teaching style to whatever works for the rookie officer.
So, Christina, of course, you work with all of the different officers. Do you have any question for Officer Ruiz?
I do.
Ruiz. Go!
There are so many aspects that, from dispatch to patrol that mimic one another as far as our training program, our daily evaluations. So the question I have for Richard is, it can encompass both since we're trying to hire for both positions, but as someone starting a family, you have a successful career. I know there are times that we have to make sacrifices in our personal life and in our career to have a nice, even balance and to be happy, to make sure that those two things mesh well together. What are some, I guess it's a 2-part question. What are some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome, and what are some of the day-to-day life activities that have changed for you from maybe some of those things that you were doing at 18 years old before being in the public eye as a police officer to now?
When I was younger, it was fun for me to go out and maybe go to Buffalo Wild Wings and have a drink and socialize. As a police officer, I'm around so many people that drink that it's not fun to me anymore. So I gave up drinking years ago. And for me, my spouse went through nursing school, so I worked midnights while she was doing that, and I would come home and watch our 1-year-old daughter while she was in school. So just having to adapt my personal life so we could be a successful family, so I can work and she can graduate school. So,
and I do think that's important. We have in dispatch and in patrol, you hear that everybody's away from their family so much, and they're working long, hard hours. It's true, but the reality is that you find a way to make it work. If you work in the evening, you find a time to spend with your children. You find time to spend with your significant other. Same thing with the daytime or working weekends or evenings, nights. I feel like in this profession, you do find ways to make things work that nobody else would have ever thought would have been an easy, or been able to find an easy solution for it.
That's right. And what's awesome about patrol, we have 3 different shifts, and it goes off seniority, so you can bid. Thankfully, I've been here 9 years, so I can kind of choose which shift I want. And that really helped me. I got hired really young, so by the time I started having a family, I was high enough in seniority that I could choose whatever shift I wanted to go to.
And that's a good point, Rod, isn't it? Things are done within the department by seniority, and also a lot of that would be the same in any, I guess, shift-related job that someone would go for. But what makes being a police officer comparable or even better than other shift jobs available in the area?
Well, these guys have the opportunity now to work 4 days instead of 5 in patrol. They work 4 10-hour shifts, and so they have 3 days off. And I think they really like it. It's a little bit different from a normal job because you're in so many different environments throughout the day. You may be inside for a little bit taking a report, and then right after that, you may be outside working some other case, or on a traffic stop, or on a citizen's assist call where you're helping a citizen out. So there's just so much variety that your mind, you're never bored. You're constantly challenged.
Richard, tell us about the adrenaline in the sense of your job has to have that come and go. How do you deal with that? And is it something that you like about the job?
It is, and that's another reason why I got drawn to this. I'm not the kind of guy that can sit in an office all day. And power to the people that can. It's awesome. I like driving around. I like talking to people, and the adrenaline's fun still. 1 minute I could be taking a report of a larceny, a shoplifter, and the next minute I'm in a car chase, or I'm chasing down someone that is a suspect for a domestic abuse. So you never know what each day unfolds. Major Taylor was right. Having 3 days off on patrol is amazing. He worked midnights with me for years, and it's awesome having that extra day off.
I think Daniel's muted.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I was muted. That's
Okay.
what happens when you do it yourself and you don't allow the smart people to do it for you. I was talking to Chrissy, and I said, I was asking, really, in your room, there's a lot of adrenaline as well. How do you guys deal with that? And is it something that you like?
It is. Some of the best days are the days that we're busy. Everybody likes to have a day where you have a little bit of downtime. You know, you can relax your brain a little bit. But the times that those guys are busy, you know, one of the things that I talked to somebody yesterday about this position is when patrol's busy, we're busy. It only makes sense because we're the ones giving the calls. And then the flip side to that is just because patrol's busy doesn't mean the ambulance service isn't going nonstop, or, you know, next to a pursuit, a structure fire is fun to work in here. You wouldn't think so, but you're keeping the guys' times for their oxygen tanks, or you're checking up on them. You're keeping track of who's incident command. I mean, there are all kinds of things that keep you going in this room. And, you know, I've had opportunities to go find a career that's a little more, probably a little easier, a little more steady day to day, but I don't know that I'm the type of person either that could function without having something going nonstop. And there's nothing that's going to keep your brain sharp quite like dispatching, because you're constantly going, you're constantly listening, you're watching. I mean, you have to have just about all 5 senses put into use when you're dispatching.
Yeah, and that's something that we forget about in dispatch. You're not just police, and you're not just giving that single call and then going on to the next. You're actually going through the entire process. Do you hear all the radio activity on certain channels, Chrissy, regardless?
Yes. And then we have a few channels that do not need to be monitored all the time, that I think just we care about the officers, so we know that if our detectives are busy on a channel, we don't listen to them full time, but we'll make sure that they're in the background so that if something does happen, you know, we know where they're at and we can get help started to them. We've had a couple of incidents like that where, you know, we'd listen to what they were doing and all of us talking in the room, I bet they're going to end up chasing this guy. And sure enough, somebody would bail out of a car and they're on a short foot pursuit on a different channel. Well, we've got all of that logged because we've been paying attention.
That's really cool. Actually, I didn't realize all of that activity at one time. And then, Rod, you know, you've been in it for a long time now, and you don't strike me, though, as one that, you know, now, it may have been different earlier, but that the adrenaline really gets you and does a lot of change. Am I off on that, or do you just deal with it differently? Or as you get into the position in which you're in, you kind of back away and the other guys get to use the adrenaline?
I think I was really into it when I first started. Like I told you one time before, that I think I would have done it for free for the first year. It was just so much fun. And you never really get tired of doing patrol. I mean, there are days when those that are challenging, but patrol is the heartbeat of the police department. So everything that comes into the police department comes through patrol. So they see the first of everything, and they're really our front line, and the image of the department is patrol. So we're really pleased with the members that we have in patrol and dispatch, because they're able to really make us look good.
Well, yeah, and Officer Ruiz, you're definitely included in that. I can tell you right off the bat. But we're all friends here. You're now talking with a bunch of kids, and you're talking to kids about being a police officer. Do you have a go-to story when one of them raises their hand and say, tell me about a call that you went on, or tell me about something that you do in your job? What do you tell the kids when they ask you that question?
You know, that's a hard question for me, because I get asked that by adults, kids all the time. Tell me about a call. Tell me something exciting. And doing this 9 years, all my days are a blur. They all run together. And it's all exciting to me. One thing that I will say, I don't know if many people know this. My rookie year, I was working under, it was Major Taylor, but he was my lieutenant. And then Freeland Wood was actually my sergeant. And there was a house fire, and it was up north, about 45th and Kickapoo area, in that neighborhood. And Freeland showed up, and I was a scared rookie. I've never done anything like that. And there was a little girl inside the house. Freeland broke the door down with my flashlight, which I still keep as a souvenir. And we went inside there. And now I realize how scary that is, because I've never done it since. But we went inside the house, and Freeland Wood located a little girl that was laying inside of a bed. She was asleep. And to me, that was like the turning point. Okay, I'm hooked with this job. I love this, because we were put in that position to save that little girl. It was awesome.
That is awesome. You said that's like 10 years ago, and the story still gives me chills.
It was great. Yeah.
Chrissy, were you on that night, or did you have anything? Do you have anything to add about that night? Do you remember it?
I remember when Richard first started. I think I was transitioning into the position that I have now, but I think I definitely remember when he started. But I know of another night. It's just been a couple of years ago. He had a pretty good pursuit that ended up going north of town, and his vehicle, he was not the driver, he wasn't the reason why his vehicle ended up upside down. But I can only imagine that, you know, like I said, we try to keep in mind that you guys are facing all kinds of things face to face that we can't even imagine. So we try to keep that in mind, and we know that there's times you guys are probably on the other side of the radio trying to tell us, you know, simmer down. We're just this time. But No, Richard is very pleasant to work with. He's very pleasant.
Thank you.
Well, Richard, and it's like it takes someone like Chrissy to be able to throw out a compliment in which your car goes upside down.
Yeah, that was an FTO moment for me. I was training a newer officer, and it was stressful being in the passenger seat.
Well, Rod, as you're responsible to us taxpayers for that kind of thing, well, how do you answer to something like that for your patrol officers?
That's hilarious. One of my other questions that I didn't ask Richard on the FTO thing is, how do you know when to intervene on a rookie? And I think that was a memorable night for him.
Yeah, it was. I've been in some fun pursuits. One where you followed me, but for that one, we were going on a highway and we were going pretty quick, and it transitioned to a dirt road.
Yeah.
And it was a newer officer. He was really young, and I told him, "Hey, we have to slow down on gravel. It's a lot harder." And hindsight, I should have told him to just let off the gas and slow it down that way. But the adrenaline, the stress, he slammed on the brakes, and the rest is history. But mainly as an FTO, you learn from failing. When you're in FTO, when you're training, you learn from failing. And for me, I'm only going to stop and interfere if you're violating someone's rights or you're doing something completely wrong. That's a little high stress on a car chase, so I kind of told them, "Hey, man, slow down." But on a normal call, we'll let them make mistakes, let them find out, "Oh, I need to go back and get this other information."
Yeah.
Well, I do have a question about that. As you said, you've had 3 that passed and 1 that failed. Was that the one that failed?
Unfortunately, so. He was a good guy. It's just it wasn't for him. He's a good guy, though.
So, Rod, the lesson there is don't roll your car.
Yeah. I'm sure that wasn't the only thing that he was struggling with, but you can tell how calm Richard is, and I think one of his collateral duties has also been a hostage negotiator. So tell us about that, Richard.
I think all the years run together. I think I did that. I went through the school in 2014 or 15. And it was really something that I didn't think much of. I got asked to go to it, and ever since that, I loved it. It was, it's really stressful being on the phone and not being face to face. I like the human interaction. So if I'm negotiating with someone on the phone, I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, what's going through their head? What's going through their head?" And you just have to keep a calm voice and try to be their lifeline on the phone so no one gets hurt. Their guys are our guys.
Wow, that's interesting. And that, that probably happens even in our community more often than people realize.
A couple times a year, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I remember one over by St. Benedict's Church, I guess, not too long ago. And there's been a few that I remember. But you're right, Rod. You don't think about that. In a town the size of ours, you don't think that you have to have somebody trained on just about every situation. That has to play into why somebody might want to become a police officer.
Yeah, these guys in patrol take on a lot of collateral duties as well. Like Richard was on the hostage negotiation team, and he got that additional training to do that. So if there is a call and he's on shift, he can respond in that manner. And I don't know if you were on bike team or any of those other teams, Richard.
I was when I first started. That was actually, I realized I was not a good bike rider in that school. that was the most physically demanding school I've ever been through. I cannot ride a bike, apparently. I learned eventually, but it had been probably 10 years since I rode a bike before that school.
Well, you said it, Officer Ruiz, that you learn by failing, right?
Exactly. You're right. Falling for that.
As we wrap this up, would you mind, Corporal, to give your best invitation to somebody who may be watching, who might know somebody who might make a good police officer, or they themselves really have a desire to be a police officer? Could you invite them?
Sure. Anyone who's interested, we have an awesome department. I love all the people I work with. All the people in dispatch are great. So we need new dispatchers as well if they're hiring. We just need people that you don't necessarily have to be the most physical person, male or female, but mainly you just have to be a good talker, because that's what we do. We mainly we serve the public, and you have to have a desire to solve problems in many different ways.
Hey guys,
excellent.
another great individual you've brought to us to introduce to the community. And what are some final comments from you, Major Taylor?
I love Richard's sincerity, and you can see that when you talk to him, that his heart's in the right place, and he truly just wants to be out there in the field, helping out, serving the public, and whatever the call is. And he was just one of those people that never complained about what type of task it was. He was just happy to do it, and we certainly need more like him.
Thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you all very much for another great day talking to a new police officer for some of us and another friend and family member for each of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You've been watching We Are City of Five Nations podcast, where we believe that community is what saves the world. It's what happens in your daily lives, where we spend 85 to 90% of our time within 10 miles of our own homes. And how fortunate we are to have such a wonderful, such wonderful people working in our police department. And they truly treat each other like family. And each one that we have talked to, everybody that I've been associated with over there at the police department, has a heart for our community and are doing their best to try to help. There's no better compliment, I would think, for a community than to have police officers who sincerely are trying to help. So what a privilege it has been for us in these episodes to be able to meet a new police officer each and every day. And Major Rod Taylor and Chrissy Brown have someone new for all of us tomorrow, as well as we look forward to another in our series of Police Positive, Fulfilling Your Dream. Would you like to be a police officer? It's available now, either in dispatch or on patrol. It is a process in which takes time, and only the best succeed and come out the other side. But we truly believe, and so does our police department, that you could be the next successful recruit. So now's the time to get your application in. You can stop by City Hall, pick the application up, and drop it back by our police department. And remember, here in the City of Five Nations, together, we are building community one season at a time. We hope to see you again tomorrow on the next episode of Police Positive.